Welcome to, or welcome back to, the Agatha Mae Detective Agency. I'm Agatha Mae, and in this video, I'm going to be answering some of the questions that you've left in the comments. Now, if I don't get to a question that you wanted answered, please ask again and put it in all caps if you need to get my attention. And before I get to the questions, I just want to let you all know how much I appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. Several of you have mentioned how I've butchered some South Carolina place names. So I'm sorry for that, and I now know that it's Waccamaw and Myrtle's Inlet, even though Myrtle's Inlet is not spelled anything like Myrtle's. A few people have asked my opinion about the men at the pawn shop who were there at the time that Micah made her purchase, and several people also want to know my thoughts on the fishermen. I don't think anyone can properly analyze the security camera footage, especially over the internet. The quality of the cameras is so low, they should be named the Miller model. Whatever I think about the men at the pawn shop is conjecture, and I don't want to muddy the waters with my guesses on who they were and what they were doing. And the same goes with the fisherman. I really hope that he's better at catching fish than he is at recounting his events of that day. And I wonder why his story has changed so much and why he initially omitted that bit about leaving the park and then coming back. I don't know why his retelling of what happened that day is so hinky, though, and I don't want to throw out wild guesses. Mama Dukes 113 asked, have you ever been a detective? And the answer is no, but I did read a lot of Nancy Drew when I was growing up, and I used to play Charlie's Angels at recess. I have had a few careers that involved research, and I think that helps me gather information and piece it together in a somewhat coherent manner. I've also been a mystery, true crime, and puzzle buff for most of my life. Mary Hall 1181 asked, how is Troy tied to Micah? And Jagmom 5164 asked, can you give a concise connection of Troy Taylor to J.P. Miller and consequently Micah? And the answer is that Troy and Wayne met while Troy was in prison. Wayne had a prison ministry and would go to speak to the men in prison and possibly ogle them and give them a little wink because Wayne is just cheeky like that. I've been told by a reliable source that Troy didn't like Wayne when they first met, which is completely understandable. But something happened and they became BFFs. Now, Wayne is John Paul's father and therefore Micah's father-in-law. I don't know that Troy ever met Micah, but he's part of the circle of shame that surrounded her. Also, I don't trust any friend of Wayne's. Violet Persuasion wrote, okay, I've been trying to see if anyone does a deep dive on the Myrtle Beach, North Carolina police chief. I think she had or does go to Solid Rock, and I believe she may be the link for JP getting away with so many illegal things. So there was a lieutenant for the Horry County Police Department, and she used to go to Solid Rock, and her husband was the head of security there. From what I found, it looks as though she and her husband have quit going to the church, and they are rooting for justice for Micah. Brownfeather 311 asks, about Charles Randall, wonder what he did in the Air Force, what his rank was. So according to one of the bios from when he was running for office, he was a master sergeant and in air defense and was a master instructor. He retired from the Air Force in 1991. And for those of you who might be wondering, he does not currently have a pilot's license. Ingsa says, I've been looking into the so-called medical examiner, Dr. Richard DeWitt Johnson, and he doesn't appear to have a license. Dr. Johnson is the medical examiner in Lumberton, North Carolina, and I was able to find a medical license for him, and it's viable until the end of this year. Tina Meyer 7080 wrote, being listed as the registered agent does not necessarily signify ownership of an entity. It merely means that you are the person named to receive service of process for that organization. While it is true that he may have an ownership interest, it does not mean he necessarily does have an ownership interest. It also says nothing about his percentage of ownership. This was regarding the Charles I Don't Beat My Wife Randall video. I understand that registered agent doesn't equal owner. However, typically someone will have either an accountant or attorney as their registered agent, or they will hire an agent service. My point was more that a large majority of the LLCs and nonprofits were not showing up anywhere other than being registered with the state, and at least one of them had a non-existent address. And according to South Carolina law, part of being the registered agent is that you have a viable address. Harley Quinn 2971 asked, can you look into if there are any connections to the homeless shelters in the area and any of the individuals associated with this case? So I've had a quick look at some of the shelters and I haven't found any connection with names that I know yet, but I'll look closer and see if there's anything there. Some of you think I sound familiar. Judy Fitch 5279 wondered if I might be Kathy Bates. Sadly, I am not. But I can get behind some Tawanda power. Also, there has been mention of me being a body language expert, and I am not her either. I prefer to just be faceless Agatha Mae. I mean, I really do have a face, I just don't want it on the internet. In my last update about Troy Taylor, there was some confusion about who the heck he even is. I'm sorry for not explaining it. I'm new to making videos and I'm learning as I go, so I appreciate the guidance. I have added links to corresponding videos under all the descriptions now, so hopefully that will help. Speaking of Troy Taylor, Southern Scoops Ice Cream made a Facebook post a few days ago stating that Robert Troy Taylor has not been affiliated with their ice cream truck for over 2 years. As far as all the friend requests on Facebook that I've been receiving, I really appreciate them. The reason I'm not accepting them is because there is literally nothing on my page. I haven't used Facebook for the past few years and I've only made a profile to start the group. And speaking of, if you haven't joined the Agatha Mae Detective Agency group on Facebook, you should. Well, if you want. I'm not going to force you. I'll post the link to the group below. And the group isn't just about Micah's case, so feel free to start a conversation about any case that you're interested in. I am beginning to look into a couple of other cases that I'll have videos on soon. I'm still working on the third installment of Reginald Wayne Miller. I was hoping to have that up this weekend, but I've come across some information that I'm having to untangle and interpret. And let me just tell you that if the allegations and what I found are true, Reggie's worse than I thought, which that wasn't a very high bar to begin with. I'm also working on a video about Susie Skinner and Trisha Ross and should have that up this week. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, stay safe and be happy.